So in today's web dev tip, we're going to start working on the stats feature of our short URLs. So we're going to give the users the ability to view stats of any short URLs that they've generated. And we need to do a few things to get this set up. We're first of all going to create a new web app. We need to configure our server to actually serve the web app. And also we need to update our deployment pipeline to make sure that when we make any changes to our project, they actually get deployed to the server as well. So as mentioned in the previous tutorial, this is just going over a bit of ground that we've done in the Rick and Roll project already. So we're going to skim over most of this, but hopefully you can follow along and see how we can quickly set up a new app and get it deployed onto our server. So the first thing is we're going to generate our new project, and we did this a few lessons ago when we created the front end application, but we're just going to create basically a new entry in our mono repo using the Narwhal web package. So this will create a web components application within our mono repo, but as we've done with the front end so far, we'll probably just stick some basic HTML, CSS and JavaScript. But of course, if you wanted to set up an Angular, React or some other kind of framework at this point, you could do that. So I'm going to call the project, actually we'll call it Rick and Roll stats, and you can see here this is the files that are going to be created. We don't really need to worry about too many of the other settings, so we'll go ahead and run that, and that will generate the new project for us. And you can see here in our folders we've got in our apps, we've got a new project called Rick and Roll stats, and also the end-to-end project file if we want to set up any automated Cypress testing. So the next thing we're going to do is just in our package.json file, we created some scripts to automatically build our projects for us. So we've got some handy npm scripts to run the nx commands. So we're just going to set up a new one for our stats app as well. So we'll just say build stats, and that will be nx run Rick and Roll stats is the name of the project. And build, and we'll also set that to prod, and we can use this now in our pipeline code to actually build that stats project ready for deployment. So that'll be the next thing if we just head on over to the GitHub action that we've got set up here. So we need to add two more steps into here. So you can see here we've already got some, where is it, just above here, we've got some steps here to build the Express app and also to build the web app. So if we just literally copy these two lines here and use those to build the stats app themselves, make sure we've got our indentation right for our YAML file. So we'll say build stats app, and this time instead of running build app, we're going to build stats. So just using that npm script that we just created a moment ago, that in our pipeline will then build this new stats application. And then the only thing we need to do down here is where we're doing all of our deployments, our transferring of files to our DigitalOcean VPS. It's to just have another step in here to deploy the stats app. And this time what we're going to do, we're going to transfer all of the files over to the DigitalOcean server. But this time we're going to say it's the Rick and Roll -stats folder, project that we're going to transfer across. And where we're going to put that, we're going to put it in exactly the same place as where the web application is, but we're just going to put that into a subfolder inside of there called stats, and just help to keep it all together so we know where everything is, and we don't need to set up any more configuration in terms of any secrets or remote paths of where that's going to. So that's the application created. We've updated our pipeline. Let's just go on over to the server and just configure that to make sure that it's ready to accept the code that we're going to push to it. So I'm just in a fresh terminal here, and we'll log on to the server with our Rick and Roll user. So the first thing we want to do is go into the Nginx configuration. So opening up the Nano text editor, we'll go into etc Nginx sites available, and we've got a file in there called rickandroll.me, which has all of our configuration. Let me just put the password in there. And so inside of this file, what we need to do is set up a new location. So we've done this once already for the API. So basically the standard root of the application is going to load files from the HTML directory from rickandroll.me/HTML. But we've also set up the API endpoint as well, the path in the domain, which forwards everything to the node application that's running. So we can do something similar, but we're going to forward all of the traffic sent to this one path to that folder that's going to contain our stats application. So let's just create a new location entry here, and we'll just say it's /stats, for example. And this time, instead of using the proxy path and pointing stuff to a node application, we just use the alias keyword. And in a similar way where we set the root to var www.rickandroll.me/html, we're going to put our stats application inside of there. So we'll say rickandroll.me HTML and then stats. And notice this time we're using that alias keyword rather than root. So we're saying any traffic that goes into the /stats of our domain, we want to forward all that traffic into the application that's going to live in that stats folder. So all we need to do is just write that file to save the changes. We should probably also reload Nginx as well. So first of all, let's just test the configuration is okay. So got a message saying the config is okay, so that's good. So we'll say system control restart Nginx, and that'll just reload Nginx and make that configuration live. The only other thing we might want to do is create that stats folder just to be sure that the directory exists for when we're transferring our files across, and it might just help explain as to what we're trying to do here as well. So in var www rickandroll.me/html, you should see all of the deployed files from our web app. So we've got the index page and all the JavaScript and style files, etc. And so we're just going to make a directory in here called stats, and that's where the stats app's going to live. So with that created and the Nginx configuration updated, we're pretty much good to go. So we can go back to our code. You can see we've got the changes that have been created there, and also for the GitHub action as well is ready to go. So we'll say feat add stats app, and if we actually push that up, what we should do is trigger the pipeline, and hopefully that should build our stats application and push it to that stats folder on the remote server. And because we've got our Nginx config in there as well, we should be able to see it once that's completed in just a moment. Okay, so we're over here in the GitHub pipeline, and the pipeline's been successful. You can see we've now built the stats app, and we've also deployed it as well, and I've checked and it's actually gone into the right place. There is, however, a little bit of a problem I've just discovered. So if we try and load the app up, we get lots of 404s in the console, and the reason for that is although we've pushed it into a kind of subpath of the project domain, you can see here when the application, the stats application, the new one that we've just created, is trying to get all of the JavaScript and style files. It's looking in rickandroll.me as the base path, and it's not referenced them when they're actually inside of the stats path. So we can fix that quite easily in our project. So we just need to go into the workspace.json file here, which is the configuration for all of the projects that we've got. And here you can see we've got the targets for the Rick and Roll stats project that we just created. And you can see here there's a property here called baseref. So at the moment it's defaulting to the root of the domain. So it's going to make sure that it's looking for files at the root. But if we change that to stats, it will then look for any of the content, any of the JavaScript CSS files when it's been deployed on the /stats path, which is obviously where all of our content lives. The other thing we also need to do is to actually update our build script as well to make sure that the assets are loaded from the base href. And we can do that in our NX tool or our npm script that we've created to run our NX tool just by simply adding an additional argument there for deploy URL. So this will just ensure that when the scripts and the star sheets are inserted into the HTML, they're inserted with this prefix. So we just say the deploy URL is equal to stats, and then we'll put a / there, and that will get joined together with the path name of the file to ensure that they get loaded correctly. So let's actually commit that now and push it up and trigger the pipeline again. So we'll say git add commit fix add base href and deploy URL to stats. And by doing a push, we'll trigger the pipeline again. And once that's completed, hopefully that would then show us that our app is now live on the /stats path of our domain. Okay, so now we're back over on our app, and you can see that on the live domain in the /stats path, we've got the Rick and Roll stats app appearing. And just to show you in here, You can see we're setting on the head the base href of stats, and also the scripts and so forth are being loaded from that stats directory, which is where all the code is located. So now with the stats application set up, in the next few tutorials what we're going to do is start working on that to actually access stats that are generated by the short URLs when they're used, and then display them off to the user just to give them some information about how the short URL has been used. But that's it for this tutorial. Make sure you stay tuned for more web dev tips.